Hello again. Cory Werkheiser, College of Charleston School of Business Student Success Center with some very important information about the resume. I do tend to think of this as kind of like the passport to your career. And as such, it's absolutely critical that the resume and to an extent the cover letter be perfect and tailored to the specific opportunity for which you are applying. If you don't do that, if you don't take the time to make it applicable and relevant to what you're trying to do, it will be a significant problem for moving forward in the process. Tips for a successful entry-level resume. Emphasis on entry-level. Keep it to one page if possible. Sometimes it's going to go on to a second page, but remember, the average hiring manager spends 7 seconds looking at a resume. If it's not absolutely perfect, if the information they need isn't right on the front page, that can be a significant issue for you. Make sure that the resume reflects you have the requisite education, skills, and experience that match what they're looking for. No spelling or grammar errors. I look at resumes all day long, and I see these things constantly. Any kind of minor spelling or large spelling error doesn't matter. If you emphasize to an employer that this is the singular document that's going to get you hired, and you make little mistakes like that, they get concerned about your ability to be really detail-oriented, especially if your resume focuses on your attention to detail. Make sure that several people review your resume. I'd be glad to do that, but I can't always help somebody do that. So have someone look at your resume, preferably someone that's really good at editing, because you'd be surprised what you miss lots of times. No use of first-person pronouns. In fact, make sure that you're focusing on these action verbs, and more about that later. You wouldn't say, I resolved customer service issues for my clients. You would say, resolved customer service issues. It's very important that you focus on that action verb, because action verbs show action. That's what you want to demonstrate to the employer. Action, that you have the skills and abilities, that you can accomplish what needs to be done. Provided, supported, coordinated, supervised. Make sure it's the proper tense. If it's your current job, present tense. If it's a former job, past tense. You didn't think you'd ever need those rules after you graduated from high school or middle school or whatever, but you do. You still need them, they're still critical, and make sure you focus on those things. Action verbs related to showing the employer what you accomplished, what you can accomplish, what you're going to provide to them as far as skills and abilities. Uploading the resume is an issue. Assume that if you have to create an account with a username and password and upload a resume and cover letter, that they're using an applicant tracking system. Applicant tracking systems are software programs, which means they are prepared by someone else to look for keywords and phrases. If you have to upload those things, most people will tell you send it as a PDF always, but sometimes that's not the best solution. .doc and Microsoft Office Word document is usually your best bet for an applicant tracking system. PDF is desirable because it locks in the formatting. You know, I'm sure if you've used Microsoft Word before, that sometimes the formatting, the tabs, the bullets can get misaligned. But applicant tracking systems scan your information and they pull out relevant things like contact information. They scan documents better than PDF. On the whole, I leave this up to the student. The important thing is a couple of things. First of all, make sure you modify the file name when you upload so it's something they'll recognize. That's important. Sometimes the default is a random thing that won't make any sense to anybody. The other thing to keep in mind is what they require. Check the directions. If they say you should upload a PDF, then don't argue about that. That's what you should do. If the employer asks you to email a copy of your resume to them personally, then I do recommend PDF. And let me suggest this too. Email it to yourself first, because sometimes you'll see when it comes into your email, it doesn't look like what you thought it would. Pay attention to your file name, check the directions. Most likely for applicant tracking systems, I do recommend Doc. I know it's a problem, I know there's a lot of confusion on this, and sometimes it just depends on who you ask. But generally speaking, I think these are good rules to follow. Words to include, your action verbs. Achieved, improved, trained, and mentored. Notice those focus on skills you have to improve things for the employer. That's important. They need to see that you're going to be contributing to their success. Launched. Hey, if you can focus on quantifiable terms like you increased revenue or increased profits or decreased cost and give them percentages and numbers, that's significant. Things you should avoid. These are words and phrases that, generally speaking, don't say anything. Like, for instance, thought leadership. I don't even know what that is, but leading thoughts. I mean, good grief, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. It's not going to make any sense on the resume either. It's important that you say things that are critical. Hard worker, yeah, they're going to assume that everybody wants to put their best foot forward, but that doesn't say anything. Focus on these keywords that are going to be useful. Action verbs always. Formatting is literally the fundamental on this thing. Make sure you use standard headings like experience, education. Sometimes people will say work experience. That's okay. Some people will say work history. That's okay. But stick with a common format, whatever you do. Your contact information, your LinkedIn profile should be on your resume. Now sometimes LinkedIn's default profile for you has a bunch of letters and numbers that don't make any sense. It doesn't look good on a resume. You can edit your LinkedIn profile URL in your LinkedIn account, and I recommend you do that. Professional summary rather than an objective, or leave it off entirely. It's kind of your call. It's going to be different for everything you do. Other headings, maybe you're involved in sports, maybe you're involved in clubs, activities. Those things are important. Maybe you need to emphasize the education more than the experience. Maybe you need to emphasize the experience more than the education. The point is, it's customized, and it will be different every time you used it. Do you know how to create the simplified LinkedIn URL? You should. It's easy to do. There's a little thing called Google. Just type in how to do that. It'll help you. LinkedIn has some help pages too you can probably use. Organized and readable. 10 to 12 point is really what you want to stick to. If you have 8 point, that's going to be difficult for somebody to read. You want to avoid doing those as well. Sans serif typefaces are the best way to go. Calibri or Arial. They're not very exciting, I know that, but they're easy to read. And that's what you want to think about. 7 seconds! The average hiring manager looks at your resume. You don't want them to have to spend 4 of those seconds trying to figure out where their glasses are or arranging the paper so it focuses. Make sure it's easy for them to read. Bullet points are useful because they emphasize and highlight and make things very easy to read in a linear format. That's what you're shooting for. Font size, typeface. Did Microsoft Word throw in some kind of random thing? Make sure everything is the same. I see resumes from time to time where in one sentence it's changed the typeface style and the font size. They didn't notice that. I did. So make sure you're checking those things. Make sure that graphics of any kind do not exist on your resume. Now, again, there are differences of opinion on this one. If you're going into the graphics field, like graphic arts or design, then that may not be absolutely true. For my School of Business students, almost across the board, I recommend to them, do not put pictures, do not put headshots, do not put images, do not use borders, do not use shading, for no other reason than because they completely throw off applicant tracking systems. They're also distracting. They're also great opportunities for things to get misaligned on formatting, and that's a bad mistake. Templates, I do not advise. It's great the first time you use it until the next time you have to add something to it, and then it messes up. Avoid the template and be consistent. Make sure your font, typeface, all of those things are consistent all through your resume. Does the formatting make sense? Look at it from the perspective of the hiring manager. Don't think of it as your resume. Think of it as you're looking to hire you. Does the resume make sense? Specific and customized. Use those keywords and phrases from the job description. Here's what I recommend. Print out a copy of the job description, sit there with a highlighter and highlight the words and phrases that apply to your skills and experience, and then put them on the resume. It's not plagiarism in this sense. It is using their keywords and phrases so that the robot in the applicant tracking system knows that you have the requisite education, skills, and experience. Remember that probably not everyone reading your resume has a pulse. So it's important that you use those keywords so the computers are happy. And if the computers are happy, they might move your information onto the human being who would also be happy to see your information and hopefully give you an interview. ATS is critical. Remember that the robots are always watching. It's important to know that your resume matches that specific description. If you're not doing that, chances are you'll never get a phone call. And here's the other thing. No one's going to call you and say, hey, here's why we didn't call you. You just won't get a phone call. References are important, but don't put it at the bottom of your resume, references available upon request. They know that. Most likely you're going to upload your references when you do your application. But it's important to have a reference sheet. I make a separate sheet that has the same contact information with my references that I can hand to the employer at the interview or upload if they require that as an optional document. But don't put it on your resume anymore. It's not necessary. It buys up really important real estate that you want to lose. Get permission from the reference first. Absolutely critical that they know you're applying. I send my job description to the reference so they know what I'm applying to and they have some ideas how they can speak to it. They should be able to speak to your ethics in work and your job skills. If it's a good friend, not a good reference. If it's a former employer or a current employer, that's a way better reference. References title, professional address, office telephone number, email contact information. If you can say current supervisor or former colleague or professor, something so that the person reviewing this knows what the relationship is, that will save some time down the road. But email is absolutely critical because a lot of companies now are emailing reference forms if they're following up with those things. Did you ask permission? If you haven't, you're doing something wrong. Don't have a reference that gets blindsided with your information. Chances are that's going to greatly impact how well they're able to give you a reference. Additional things to consider: highlight your special skills, highlight your internships. If you have language skills, if you were in athletics, if you served in the military, those things should be itemized on your resume. Understand that as time progresses, some things may become less important. If you were in 9th grade soccer and you're 20 years into your career, who cares? But if you served 4 years in the military, that is a long-term benefit to your professional career, and it should be included on your resume. The resume should be sent to your email so you can see how it looks. Very important. A lot of people don't do this step. It takes a few extra seconds, and it will save you a lot of trouble down the road. If you have any questions, you can comment to me at any time. Notice that I have an extra bullet point here. Hey, simple editing and reviewing of this PowerPoint presentation would have saved me from this embarrassment that's now going to be on YouTube potentially forever. But that's why I recommend that you proofread. And yeah, I did that on purpose so I can make that point. Anyway, resume pitfalls. Typos are something that are significant. Lying, if you make the mistake of, intentionally or not, saying something that is wrong, that can be a significant problem for your potential employer. Understand that it is very easy now for employers with the internet to find out if what you have on your resume is true or not. Inaccurate or incomplete contact information. Don't let me call you to offer you an interview and find out that the number doesn't work because you transposed numbers in your contact information. It's easy to do. Your email address should be professional. Make sure that your email address conveys you are a professional. First dot last name is really the best way to go. If you have things that have been on your email address for years and years, sometimes it's a good idea to change that. Keywords, don't have a confusing format. Make sure it makes sense. Month and year on your education or experience are important. And finally, if it's impossible for them to read, that is not going to be helpful. Notice my resume, even if it's a little bit blurry, is very clear and concise and one page. It shows my education, experience, activities, and skills. It's very important that you do that. And my contact information is very clear at the top. LinkedIn, email address, phone number, address. Avoid the street address if you want to. I think with privacy considerations these days, it's not really necessary to add that on your resume if you're handing that out to a bunch of different people. Obviously, if you apply, you won't have any choice, but for purposes of privacy, I do recommend dropping the street address. City, state, zip is fine. Add in any other experiences you think are relevant. Bottom line is, this is your passport to your career. If it's not absolutely perfect, if it's not tailored to the specific job, you could be excluded from some great opportunities. As always, you can comment, contact me, let me know what you think. Always glad to hear from you and help you. Cory Werkheiser, Student Success Center here at the College of Charleston School of Business. Have a great day.